about work?
Just plain work.
When work at home is planned and organized for cooperation, there can usually be more time for leisure.
I'm certainly in favor of those things. Leisure, fun.
Who isn't?
Wouldn't we all be happier if we worked out a little system for living together in harmony?
But how can we manage them?
We'll have to work out the full answer together.
Say, Mom, you're swell.
Most family problems can be solved through frank and friendly discussion, which points the way to a happy family life.
You know, this is beginning to be quite a family project.
It certainly is.
When I say the word family, what comes to your mind? What do you think about? What emotion immediately hits you? What feelings begin to kind of percolate inside of you? Perhaps joy, excitement, and fulfillment and hope, or hurt, worthlessness, anger, frustration. When it comes to family, what do you hope for? What do you long for? What do you dream about? And for me, when I hear the word family, there's something that just kind of lights up in the primal piece of my DNA. When I think of family, there's like this piece of me in the very, heart of my soul, in the formative area of my soul, that lights up, and there's security, and there's warmth, and there's, intimacy, and just being seen and value. In fact, in that part of my soul, the word family is synonymous with the word love. That family is absolutely everything to me. But at the same time, family is synonymous with love, as well as there's another word in that space. It's the word complex. Family is complex. In fact, to illustrate this, I want to introduce you to my family. In fact, I actually want to do something I've never done before. I want to introduce you to my extended family. So I want to go way back. And I want to introduce you to my grandfather right there. Look at him. His name is Leroy Parmley. And I want you to pay attention to his hair. That's one of my favorite things about him. And he is hands down my favorite grandfather. He is just a man of adventure. He was a wild man. He was a pilot. And he would tell me about all the different adventures around the world and how many planes he crashed. I mean, he crashed all the time. I was like, seriously. He told me one time a story about working on the Alaskan pipeline, and a man went crazy, and he said, I had to fight the man. And I was like, really? Tell me about it. He's like, I bit his ear off. And I was like, oh, you're amazing. Just a wild guy. He taught me so many things in life. He taught me to hunt. He bought my first rifle, and he actually bought it from a garage sale way back when. Can you imagine that? I mean, that was just, he taught me to garage sale and to find all these amazing deals. That is my grandfather, Leroy Parmley. And his father, his name is Robert. I never met my great-grandfather, but Robert and Leroy, what they bonded around was hunting, as you can see. And then my grandfather met the love of his life, Dolores. And there they are on the beach. And man, they fell madly in love, and together they had 4 children. My 3 uncles, and then my mom. Right there. And right above my mom is my dad, and right below my mom is my big sister. And that's my mom, or my mom's side of the family. And then my dad's side, my dad's parents, right here, it's Albert and Elizabeth. There they are. And I love Albert and Elizabeth, my grandparents. They're like the steady Eddie grandparents, right? They're the ones for Christmas that got me socks and underwear. And I'm like, thank you. I mean, they bought me my first car. They just provided. They were safe. They're just wonderful grandparents. And then my parents, they got married, and here they are, young hippies, having fun. Together they had 2 kids. This is my sister and I. And legally, my sister's name is Melanie. Legally, my name is Justin. We've never been called that. My sister, her name is Duck. I call her that today. When I texted her this week, I was like, hey, Duck, And my name, when I was born, my parents called me Buckwheat. And then when I get to middle school, I shortened it to be more manly, Buck. And so I don't know why really they named me that. For my sister, they named her Duck because when she was born, she had all this blonde hair. She looked like a duck. But again, I told you my parents are hippies. They were smoking a little bit of the roach. So, something was happening there. That may be the explanation. Anyways, but my sister, she got married to Danny, and together, this is only 5 of their 7 children. Large families, and my beautiful wife and I, Jill and I, this is from a couple weeks ago. We were at one of the best beaches in the whole world, Port Aransas. You may have heard of it. Right there. And that's my 5 boys, man. And I'm telling you, when I look at my family, I'm just like, I love them. There's something in the deepest part of me as a human being that just lights on up. But at the same time, it's complex. When I think about Robert, my great-grandfather, he's in World War I, suffered immense trauma, brought that to his family. Extraordinarily abusive, horrific abuse with his daughters and my grandfather. My grandfather would tell me about that. And then my grandfather brought that into his home. When my mom would tell me stories about what Leroy did to his sons and did to my mom, it just was unbelievable. I remember in high school when my mom had to leave and go pick up my grandmother, Dolores, because my grandfather had beat her to a pulp and she needed medical attention. And in that moment, my eyes were open to go, are you kidding me? It's my favorite grandfather. He did what? And then when it comes to my grandparents, Albert and Elizabeth. Elizabeth was institutionalized as a young woman because of an addiction. As she got out of the institution, she met my grandfather. They fell madly in love, or hubba hubba or whatever. And then she became pregnant before they were married. And my grandfather didn't want to marry her, but out of loyalty, he married her because she was pregnant with my father. My father grew up in a highly dysfunctional home where my grandmother Elizabeth continually threatened him with suicide. That's how she controlled him. He told me about one vacation she was standing on a cliff and she said, I'm going to kill myself if you don't. I'm going to kill myself because you don't love me. Manipulated the hell out of my father. And then his dad Albert never showed him love. Never told him he loved him. Never physically showed him love. Never did anything other than give him money to show love. That's it. And then my parents, they met one another. 2 highly dysfunctional teenagers. And my dad got my mom pregnant when she was 16. My mom, and then he married her, kind of like, I guess I got to do this. And that was my older sister. 4 years later, I come along. We grew up in a home where my parents did not have tools to understand what marriage is all about, to understand the meaning and purpose of marriage, and to understand how to parent 2 kids. And that has impacted my sister and I in significant ways. Talk to my sister, and she talks about some of the struggles that she has in life. And then I think about my family. And if you've come to Northpoint, I've been very authentic, very real with you guys. And my greatest regret in life is the first 10 years of parenting. I mean, for me, it was so important to control my children. I had to control them because that's how I felt peace on the inside. And whatever it took to shame them, to yell at them, whatever means necessary to control my children, to disempower them so I could feel powerful as a man, I did. One of the greatest regrets of my life. When I think about family, for me personally, it's everything. It connects to the deepest part of who I am. But all I'm telling you is I think about the reality of family. Oh, it's complex. It's complicated. And I don't think I'm alone. I think for every single one of us, regardless if you're a God follower or not, I mean, I think there is an ideal when it comes to family. Man, I'd love this to be my family. One day, someday, I dream about this. I hope this. This is a family, I hope to be part of. I mean, I think we all have the ideal. But then we live life. Then we begin to wake up to things. Then we begin to see things. Now, family is incredibly complex. And it's in the ideal and the real that this family tension is created. And again, I think we all have this family tension. And the question is, what do you do in the tension? What do you do with that? Because that's just real. That's life. That's reality. You're not going to escape it. Well, Jordan, as he launched the series in part 1 last week, he did such a remarkable job talking about what we can do in the tension and how God can meet us in remarkable ways. And if you weren't here for part 1, I really want to encourage you to go back and discover what he said about what to do with that family tension. Now, today what I want to do is I want to talk about another dynamic in that family tension. And it's a temptation. And I honestly think this temptation is something that we all will face in our life. That over time, maybe over some weeks, some months, some years, maybe even some decades, that over time when it comes to family, perhaps you will think or you will even say this out loud. You will say, is it worth it? When it comes to family, is it really worth it? Because day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, there's so much dysfunction with my dad, with my mom, with my stepdad, with my uncle, with my grandfather, with my brother. Oh my gosh, he's a mess. With my sister, what she's doing, with my cousin. You know, it's just so much dysfunction. And it creates so much emotion, doesn't it? This emotion, just feeling alone again, feeling dismissed again, feeling not seen again. Just feeling so exhausted. Like, when is this ever going to stop? And you can feel that. And with the tension, there is a temptation to go, is it worth it? Is it really worth it? What's the point anyways? I mean, why not just kind of walk away? I mean, life could be so much better over here. I'll figure this out because there's such an incredible mess. Or perhaps in the tension, you've asked the question, what's the purpose? Honestly, what is the purpose of family? And today what I want to do is I actually want to answer that question. I mean, what is the purpose of family? If I ask you that, like honestly, where does your mind go? What would you say is the purpose of a family? That's a really, really important question. Because when it comes to family, and you read all the research and what sociologists will say and all the different things around culture and all the different things around human history, family is foundational. It is foundational to every aspect of your life, every aspect of community, culture, countries, the world. In fact, pretty much every problem, majority of problems that we face in our schools, that we face in our culture, that we face in our nation, that we face around the world, could be addressed in the family. We address it with money, we address it with politics, we address it with ideology. But if we just looked at the family and started to work on the family, it would actually address so many of the systemic issues that we face in our world, because family is foundational. It's where we grow, it's where we prosper, it's where safety is found, it's where identity is found. In fact, this is one of the reasons why I love Mother Teresa's quote when it comes to family. I think she gets it. She says, what can you do to promote world peace? Go home and love your family. She understood the purpose of family because she understood world peace, national peace, culture peace, city peace, family peace, and your peace is all going to be found in family, because that is the foundation for all of us. So, what's the purpose of family? And why is it so important to understand this? Well, we need to look at the word purpose, because understanding what purpose is, the definition, and why it's so important, regardless if it's family or any aspect of life, it's critical to understand. So when it comes to purpose, just a very simple definition. Purpose is basically the why behind the what. It's the reason behind why something exists. It's the justification behind why that exists. That's a simple definition of purpose. And the reason why knowing purpose is so important for your life and my life, again, regardless if you're a God follower or not, is because purpose provides direction. It provides that clarity. When you understand what's most important, you know, there's so many analogies and illustrations like the big rocks. When you know what big rocks to prioritize, because you now have clarity, now you finally have direction in life. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? Should I prioritize this? Should I prioritize that? Direction is critical in life. That's what purpose gives you. Knowing purpose provides that. It also provides motivation. Knowing purpose, that motivation to be disciplined, that motivation to sacrifice, that motivation to lean into the mess of our families again and again, that motivation, that resilience, that perseverance is like, oh, okay, I'll do it again. You know, where does that come from? Well, now that I know what's most important, now I know the reason, it now provides the motivation. It also provides meaning. Because when you make sacrifices, when you do something for the greater good, when you participate in something transcendent, that's where meaning is going to be found. provides direction, provides motivation, it provides meaning. It also provides health. Again, all the research points to this. When you wrap your life around purpose, it provides that mental, that emotional, that physical health. Stress goes down, anxiety goes down, less depression because you are wrapping your life around purpose. It is incredibly powerful. And isn't that what you want in life? Like, think about your life real quick. Don't you want direction? To have clarity? To have resilience? To have meaning? To finally have some health? To be free? To be liberated? Content? Joyful in life? That's what purpose provides. And how much greater would that be provided in the foundation of the purpose of a family? This is why this discussion is so important for all of us. So the question, again, to circle back to, what's the purpose of family? How would you answer this? Well, today, I want to provide you with the distinct purposes of family. And I want to tell you the source. The source that's going to provide the purpose is the Bible. And hopefully that shouldn't surprise you because we are a church. If you walked in here and you're like, this is a church? Wow, I had no idea. Well, welcome to church, you know? And as a church, I mean, the source is the Bible. And so if you were to read the Bible, if you were to read it cover to cover, say you were to go Genesis to Revelation, maybe 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, cover to cover, and you were to ask the question, you know, what are the observations? How can I synthesize all of this into the distinct purposes of family? You would come up with 4 summary statements, 4 very distinct purposes all throughout the scriptures, all throughout the 66 letters that you see over and over and over. And I want to share those with you today because it will provide direction, motivation, meaning, and overall health. It's so powerful. So let's jump in and begin with purpose number 1, which is to provide love and identity. You would see that observationally over and over and over. That when it comes to family, that's a purpose. That regardless if you're 2 days old or if you're 100 years old, you need consistent deposits of this love and identity in your life. If you're a 45-year-old man or 45-year-old woman, you need that consistency to say, man, you are loved, and this is who you are, over and over. So what is love? Well, we get a definition of love in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, a very famous chapter. Here's love. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. That's love. Now here's what's really cool. You see that list and you're like, oh man, that's crazy. Did you know Jesus is the personification of that list? That Jesus came to personify that. That if you looked at the life of Jesus, that's how you would describe his love. He not only personified it, but he demonstrated his love for you and for me. And then if you're a follower of Christ, this is really important, lean in. In John chapter 13, Jesus leans in and says, all followers of Christ, a new command I give you, which means this is not optional. This is not, well, maybe someday, if I feel like it, if I'm, a new command I give you, love one another. How, Jesus? As I have loved you. 1 Corinthians 13. I command you to love one another. That's not only in this world, that's not only at work, that's not only in your relationships, that's in your family. That you are to consistently love one another as I have loved you. It's foundational. It's not only love, but it's identity. One of the great examples of this is when Jesus was baptized. I love this picture that is painted. From God the Father to God the Son, here's what happens. God the Father says, this is my Son, identity. That's who he is. And then he says, whom I love, there's love with him. I am well pleased. Look at the value. Look at the worth. That's my boy. That's my son. That's the purpose of a family. It means that a husband is to look into his wife's eyes and to provide that consistent love and identity. You are absolutely stunning and beautiful. You light up everything within me. I so want to continue to discover you because of your worth and value in my eyes. Oh, I love you. It's for a wife to look at a husband consistently Say, oh, I so respect the man you are. I am madly in love with you, your strength, and the way you provide. Man, I'm in love with you. It's for a father and a mother to look at their sons and daughters and go, oh, that's my girl. That's my boy. Look at them. It's for grandparents to be in stands, or aunts and uncles to be in the stands and watch their grandchildren or watch their niece or nephew and go, oh, look at them. That's amazing. That's my grandson. Woo! And to yell as loud as they can. Deposits of consistent love, deposits of identity. It's the aunt to sit down with her niece, say, I know what that man said about you, but let me tell you who you are. It's that great-grandmother to sit down with her granddaughter and say, I know he left you, and I know you're divorced and you never thought that would happen, but let me remind you how much you're loved and who you are as a woman. That's the purpose of family, love and identity. For me, the greatest moment I've ever experienced this in my family happened several years ago when my mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. She was given 6 months to live, and she lived in Colorado and Denver, and we live in Austin. And so she flew to Austin. She wanted to spend time with me and my beautiful wife and her 5 grandchildren, the 5 boys. So she comes and we have a great time. We enjoyed, had wonderful memories, took a bunch of pictures. And then I drove her to the airport. As we drove to the airport, I had this thought. I said, this may be the last time I ever see my mom. And she had that same thought. Remember, we parked the car, we walk into the airport, there's security, and I know this is as far as I can go. And we were looking at our watches, and the time finally came. And my mom did something she had never done before. She opened her arms in the biggest way she's ever done. She gave me the biggest hug I've ever received from my mother. And she put her cheek against mine. And for 3 minutes, nonstop, love and identity. She said, you are a phenomenal man. You are a remarkable husband. You are a great father. You are such a wonderful pastor. I am so proud of you. You have so much worth. I love you with all of my heart, my son. Over and over and over. You know what happened? Inside the primal piece of my DNA and that deep part of my soul, it lit up. Something lit up so big within me because she tapped into the purpose, the foundation of family. That is what we're called to do for one another in our family. And yes, that is the ideal. That was the only time my mother had done that in 35 years in my life. The purpose of family, first and foremost, to provide love and identity. Secondly, is to intentionally educate. In the letter of Proverbs, I love the letter of Proverbs, Proverbs 22, it says these words. It says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. I want to say a couple things on this because that's important. Number one, this is universal to a family. It's speaking parents to children, but this is all family members to intentionally educate, to intentionally teach. The second thing about a proverb is you need to know Proverbs aren't 100% true. Proverbs are great, wise statements that are 95% of the time, that's how life works, but there certainly are exceptions. And in this context, in the context of parenting, I've talked to so many parents, I've felt this myself, that oftentimes when we read this, we're like, this isn't true. This isn't how life works. Because you parent your kids and you teach them all these things, and then they're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and you're like, oh my gosh, have they heard a word I've said? Have they experienced anything I've taught them? Do you know how much sacrifice is like? They don't hear anything. They're like on their own planet. And you're like, there's just no hope. And you're like, oh, I failed miserably as a parent, right? And then they're 25, 26, 27. And they say something. And you're like, oh my gosh. All the work that I've done, it's starting to connect. They actually did hear me. Things are coming together. Well, when you read this in the original language, which was Hebrew, that's the context. Make these intentional deposits in your family. And when they are old, that means developed. Now we have enough science to know that the frontal lobes developed around 25-ish. So that decade of despair, that decade of hopelessness as a parent, there is hope. There is hope. That's the point of the proverb. Again, there are exceptions, 95%. But the point is this. As a family, we are to intentionally educate, to intentionally teach. That's on a practical level. That's a grandfather showing his grandson how to throw a ball. That's a grandmother, showing her grandchildren how to cook something or make something. That's a brother showing another brother how to weld. That's an uncle talking to his nephew about finances and going, hey, I'm in the financial world. Let me tell you how to figure this out. It's a great uncle talking to, his family saying, hey, let me teach you how to get old. Has anyone ever taught you how to get old? How to get old well? That's an important thing. That comes from family. How to be married for a long time. When you're married 20 years, 30 years, your kids are now out. Who are you? Who teaches you there? That's family. That's a responsibility of family. And we can talk a lot of things on the surface, and those are good. How to throw a ball, how to do finances, all really practical things. But they're important things in life in terms of how to grow old well, in terms how to be married for many, many years. That's important. In fact, the other day, I was talking to one of my sons, and he was sharing with me something that was very difficult, and that he was like, man, I'm really struggling. I want to, but I don't want to. I want to, but I don't want to. Oh, it's just really hard. This is a big tension in life. And I looked at him, and I said, hey, remember what I taught you when you were a little boy? I've taught you this for years and years about what it means to be a man. And he looked at me, and he kind of rolled his eyes, and he's like, yeah. It's like, well, what does it mean to be a man? He said, well, here's what it means. It means to reject passivity, accept responsibility, lead courageously, and expect a greater reward. He said, well, that's important. That's important. There's intentionality around that. Because every man is going to feel the feelings and desires you feel as a man. But here's what I've trained. Here's what it looks like, is to reject those feelings. To go, no, there's something better. There's responsibility. Responsibility, it's sacrifice. It's ridiculously hard. That's where meaning and purpose and greatness is going to be found in life. It's to reject those feelings of passivity, to lean into the responsibility, and to lead courageously, because most men won't do this. And then to expect a greater reward, because if you're willing to do things most men won't do, you'll experience things most men won't experience. So lean in, son. Lean in, son. Every man experiences that. And we're having this conversation. There are important things in life to teach our children. And guys, here's the deal. When it comes to intentionally educating, we can do this a lot. In fact, you can talk to Jill or talk to my boys. One of the things they say about me, they're like, he just talks forever. He just talks and talks and talks. My boys are like, Dad, stop preaching to us. We got the point 10 minutes ago. Jill's number one feedback in parenting, don't talk as much with our kids. Anyways. And that's probably your feedback to me in teaching. You're like, Buck, if we could shorten this sermon to about 25 minutes, things would be great. Anyways, the point is this. Talking is really important. That is part, the spoken word is how we communicate and teach and let me, instruct you. It's a really important part. But perhaps something far greater is what you demonstrate, what you model. In fact, I love Joseph Pierce. He focuses on human development. He has this quote. I think about it all the time. He says this, what we are teaches a child far more than what we say. So we must be what we want our children to become. As a grandfather, as a cousin, as an uncle, as a mom, as a brother, as a sister, yes, we need to do this. But perhaps more importantly, what we teach, we must model. Because what we model teaches oftentimes far more than what we have to say. That's the purpose of a family. It's to provide love and identity, to intentionally educate, and to support and care. I love what the Apostle Paul says in Colossians 3. Colossians 3 is a fantastic chapter. It talks to followers of Christ and families. Here's what he says in Colossians 3. He says, make allowances. That's like make grace. Be patient. Make allowances for each other's faults. And forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Forgiveness is not optional, right? And here's what Paul understood. There's not a perfect person. That we've all fallen short of the standard of perfection. And if you are here today, or if you're watching or listening online, you're like, nah, I think I'm pretty good. I have not fallen short of the standard of perfection. Come talk to me. I want to introduce you to Jesus. Perhaps after a discussion with him, you're like, oh, maybe not so perfect. But the point is this. We've all fallen short of a standard. We've all sinned. Sin throughout the Bible is outside of God's design. We've operated outside of his design. We've fallen short of that standard. If you're not a God follower, you have a standard. You've fallen short of your own standard. We've all missed the mark. And my question is this, as a human being, because you're human, I'm human, we're all going to fall short, we should embrace and welcome ourselves to humanity. And when you step into humanity and your imperfections and my imperfections, my question for you is this, is where do you go when you mess up? Where's that place of safety? That you can be seen, you can be heard, you can be accepted, you can be loved? Let me ask this question. When you mess up, where do you receive unconditional love? Where do you receive the words, there's nothing you could do, there's nothing you could say to make me love you any less? Your value will never change in my life. I love you, all of you. Or for you, who is there to express true love? True love is an important concept to understand. See, true love isn't me just going, oh, I accept you, I accept you, I accept you. That's not true love. That's very cheap love. True love always exists in the presence of judgment. That I see all of you, all of your good, and I see all of your bad. And then I make a judgment to say, oh, how I love you. That's true love. Where do you experience, who do you experience true love to where you're fully seen in your life? You know, when it comes to love, there's an emotional side of love, which is really important. That's family. Family's the individuals in your life to say, hey, it's okay not to be okay. That's the emotional side of love, right? Hey, I accept you. I see you. I hear all the things you just expressed to me. Man, I see you. Your value has not changed. Regardless of what you say or do, I love you unconditionally. But that's only one half of love. The other side of love that you have to have is the judicial side of love, which oftentimes we miss. The judicial side of love is to say not only it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. It's the balance and the tension between I accept you and I love you and I see you and I'm not going anywhere and you're my son or you're my brother or you're my grandson. And to say, but I'm going to patiently foster and develop the man or woman you could be. And those are in tension. And there's a lot of patience and there's balance in that. And that is such a struggle in a family. But that is the purpose of family. This is so modeled in the life of Jesus over and over and over. Great example is this, is when Jesus caught the woman in adultery. She's before a big crowd. The whole crowd walks away. Now it's Jesus, the only perfect sinless one. And the woman caught in adultery outside the design of God. And what does he say to her? You see the emotional and the judicial side. Then neither do I condemn you. It's okay not to be okay. Your value and worth has not changed as a result of what's happened in your life. I love you. But it's not okay to stay that way. Go now, leave your life of sin. It's just making life more complicated. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. I've come to give you life and life to the full. He wasn't kidding. There's actually a design of something far greater than whatever you're experiencing over here. That is the purpose of family, to support and to care. Fourth is this, is to nurture faith, to nurture faith. Moses, perhaps you've heard of him, Moses and Pharaoh, let my people go, you know. Moses said to the Israelites these words, I love this. He says, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. That's with every ounce of you to trust God. And then he goes, and you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you today, because God's commands, God's designs, this is again what Jesus said. I've come to give you life and life to the full. There is a better way. Trust me, surrender to me. Okay, Moses, what should we do practically? We'll repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road and when you're going to bed and when you're getting up. In other words, there's a very practical piece to nurturing this faith. That yes, God is the one who will never forsake you or leave you. God is the one whose love is unfailing. God is the one whose peace transcends all understanding. God's command, there's a purpose. I know you may feel oppressed. I know you may feel the institution of the church is trying to push you down, but no, there's a greater way, God's way. And man, that's liberating. That's freedom is to be found there. So we as a family, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers and sisters, all of us together, we're going to nurture that faith, that trust, that confidence. If I was to summarize this for the family, I would say this. The primary role of a family is to guide each other in trusting their Heavenly Father, who will never leave them or forsake them. You want to know the number one objective, the number one outcome, the number one goal of a parent? Number one goal of a parent is to transfer the trust of their son or daughter away from them to their Heavenly Father. The number one goal of a dad is to say, hey, I want to be strong. I want to provide. I want to have all this wisdom and insight. I want to be that for you. But man, there's someone so much stronger, so much more wise, so much greater than me, that I want you to take your trust that you have in me, and I want you to fully put that trust in your Heavenly Father, who will never forsake you or leave you. The number one goal of a grandparent, the number one goal of a brother or a sister or a cousin is to say, hey, that trust that you've given to me, I so appreciate it. That's a big deal. But I want you to take that trust, and my number one objective, my goal, is for you to transfer that trust to your Heavenly Father, because His words are the words of life. His ways are the ways that will give you peace. His truth is the truth that will set you free. And His love is unfailing. It will never fail you. I am a flawed human being. He is not. He's your Heavenly Father. That is the purpose of a family. I was talking to Jill the other day, and we were talking to about one of our sons, and he's met with this couple, and he's going to meet with this other couple, and he's getting all this advice, and he's getting some advice from us, and we were talking about this, and I just said, and both of us, Jill and I, we just both said, you know what, that's all great, but that couple's flawed. That other couple's flawed. Babe, you and I, we know we're flawed. And Jill's like, yep, I see it. No, I'm kidding. But we all know. I'm a human. I miss the mark a lot. And we both said to one another, our greatest hope for our son, our greatest hope for all of our sons, is that they transfer their trust from that advice and our advice to their Heavenly Father. Because He will never leave them. He will never forsake them. And He is the way, the truth, and the life. That is the purpose of family, to nurture that. So, for the rest of your life, from this day forward, as you walk out, you now know the purpose of family. That you can say that when it comes to family, family is to provide love and identity, to intentionally educate, to support and care, to nurture and faith. And remember what purpose does for you. It provides something. This is so cool. Now you have direction and clarity. So as you think about this, you're like, okay, that's what's most important. Now you have motivation. I don't feel like it. My brother, have you met him? You know, my sister, you know. But now you have the motivation to make those choices because you know the reason behind why something exists, why family exists. You know why it's so important. Now you can give your life towards something that's meaningful. You have something that is transcendent. It's going to require something bigger than you. And now you know what's going to provide health. Something for mental, emotional, and physical to finally experience something that you've longed for. Because that's what purpose provides. It's foundational. And this is why Mother Teresa, I love what she said. Go home and love your family. Because she knew how foundational it is. It leads to peace in the world, peace in the nation, peace in the culture, peace in the city, and peace in your life. So, I want to wrap up with 3 questions. And I really want you to think about these in light of the purpose of family. Number 1 is, how are you leading your family to accomplish these purposes? My hope and my guess is, as I've been talking, that maybe the very Spirit of God has been pressing. And maybe as a father, maybe as a mother, maybe as a grandfather or grandmother, maybe as an aunt or uncle, maybe as a cousin, maybe as a brother or sister, whatever role you are in the family, there's been something when I've talked about these ideas to provide love and identity that you're like, yeah, that's the area I need to lean into. Or maybe when it's intentionally to educate, maybe there's some practical areas, Or there's some foundational areas that you're like, I need to get my mind around that. I need to understand the ways of God because, man, that's so important in my family. Or maybe that's support and care. There's a conviction that you have as in your family to go, you know what? I've been leaning so hard on the judicial side of love, I've missed the emotional side of love. And they just need to look into my eyes and see that I love them and accept them. Or maybe, that whole idea about nurturing faith, maybe that's the area. Whatever it is, may you use that conviction, what the very Spirit of God perhaps has given you. And as you walk out today, lean into that because that is so foundational. It is purpose. It provides health for you and those around you. Second question. Is there anything getting in the way of you experiencing a greater purpose with family? Is your job getting in the way? Progress, success, accomplishments, bank accounts, notoriety, fame? Is it getting in the way of something so foundational for you? When it comes to perhaps your schedule, busyness, you got to go, and I got to experience that, and we got to experience this as a family. We got to go here and go there and meet with them and meet with her. Is that getting in the way of something so foundational and important in your life? Is there a hobby? I get hobbies. Those are important, right? That's the time that you can center yourself and get some relief so you can be the healthiest version you can be for your family. I get it. But is the hobby now getting in the way of what's most important and purposeful in your life? Is there a distraction? Is there some sort of habit, kind of distraction that you're just indulging in a little bit too much? I mean, I've shared with you guys, and I hate sharing this, but I'll share it again. One of my distractions on my iPad is the game Clash of Clans. That whole thing, I've shared this. I feel like I'm 12 when I'm sharing it. But I've played this game. And I'm sitting there going, I need to walk out the door and be with my family. I just need to get off this thing, right? Is there a distraction like that? Or is there a secret? Is there a sin you're operating outside the design of God and you've believed this lie because you keep telling yourself this over and over and over? As long as no one knows, everything will be okay. It's a lie. And you know it. You may not admit it, but your soul knows it because you're starting to see the cracks in your family. You're starting to see the cracks in your relationships. You're starting to look in the mirror and you can see the cracks in yourself. Because for so long you said, as long as no one knows, everything will be okay. And now, you know it's not okay. It's jeopardizing what's most purposeful. Or is there a health thing? Maybe a physical health thing that's getting in the way? Or mental or emotional health? One of the reasons why I and we talk about counseling so much here at Northpoint is because a counselor just opens your eyes. That's all they do. A counselor just gives you one of the greatest gifts you could have as a human being that's called self-awareness. This idea to go, hey, the reason why you work so much and need to get your identity there is because perhaps what mom didn't do, what dad didn't do. The reason why you have to be so busy and go, the reason why your bank account has to be the way it is, the reason why you have to spend so much time on that hobby, so much time on the distraction because you got to cope has everything to do with what mom and dad or with what happened a long time ago that we've stuffed away for way too long. Maybe it's health. For you, what is it that's keeping you from experiencing something so foundational and purposeful in your family? Last of all is the question I think maybe you have for me. And I'm guessing this. What if it's not possible to experience a greater purpose of family? On a practical level, you would say, Buck, they're not here. I can't. Maybe from a relational level, you would say there's so much trauma, so much abuse. Hey, I've worked on the forgiveness, but there's no reconciliation because it is not safe to be around them. And those boundaries are appropriate and important when it comes to family. We're going to talk about that more in this series. But if you're sitting here and you're going, Buck, it's just, as I think about my family, as I think about, my second, third, fourth marriage, as I think about all the dysfunction, it's just not possible to experience. What you're talking about is so ideal. And you're right. You're right. And here's the thing. Here's what I'd say. I can't explain And I can't tell you all the reasons why. God gave you the deck of cards he gave you when it comes to your family. That's a conversation you will have to have with God one day. That is way too big of a conversation. And I can't explain that. But God gave you something beyond your immediate family. God not only established your immediate family, but God has also established the church family. What I love about the scriptures is when you put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, you are called a new creation. You are now called sons and daughters of God. That you have new brothers and sisters. You have new family members. This is why sometimes when you walk into a church, especially a more conservative kind of traditional church, you hear people go, hey, brother, hey, sister. And you're like, what is this? This is a weird place, you know? It's because they understand that spiritual nature of going, hey, I've got a brand new family. This is why the Apostle Paul writes to young Pastor Timothy. It's not his son, but he says, hey, in the Spirit, I am your father writing to you. How can you say that? Because the church is also a family. And what is the purpose of a church family? It's the same thing. It's to provide that love and identity, to intentionally educate, to support and care, to nurture and faith. Guys, there is another option available to every single one of us. And I put an asterisk right there. I did. Because you can tell me lots of stories of the dysfunction you've experienced in church. And I would hear every one of those stories, and I'd affirm every single one and say, yep, that's right. Because there's a lot of dysfunctional people in the church. But the healthier the church can be, the broader the church can be. You can step in and join a small group. You can step in and serve. And yes, there's an immediate need that can be met and people can be served. But there's a family you're joining. Brothers, you're joining. Moms and dads, you're joining. Cousins, you're joining. People to look at you and affirm your identity and affirm your worth and affirm love consistently and to provide that support and care. In my small group, I've heard this so many times. Jill and I share things. Other small group members in the living room share things that we would never share with our family. And guess what we're met with? Hey, thanks so much for sharing. Thanks so much for trusting us. Man, Buck, let me tell you, we love you. I love you. And we begin to intentionally teach. Hey, let me tell you what I've done. Let me show you some things over here. We show that emotional side of love, that judicial side of love. It's okay not to be okay. It's not okay to stay that way. And the dynamic as family is met over and over and over. There is another place you can go. The bottom line from this day forward is now you know the purpose of family. Provides direction, motivation, meaning, and health. And I love the words of Mother Teresa. Go home and love your family. It's foundational. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this moment that we can be together. Father, I know all these words meet all of us in different ways, and you're big enough to handle that. So I just pray that you meet all of us, encourage all of us, and be gentle with us, Father. Help us take a step and trust you. Have clarity with purpose and lean in and surrender some things and experience something so much greater. We love you in Jesus' name, amen.